Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Good afternoon. Tonight I'm going to be speaking about the visualization of geolocated tweets using a blend of machine learning and GIS. And I start with a little bit of background on Twitter. So Twitter, users generate a lot of information on Twitter every day. And a proportion of this information is actually geolocated, which is very interesting because we can use this data as a proxy for human presence, so to understand where people are. And this raises an important question: how to assimilate these sometimes huge data sets that could be easily perceived as noise by the human eye, and extract from them something which is relevant. And I think here we have two challenges in place. So in one hand, we have like a sort of more technological challenge, which is related to big data technologies. And I'm not going to go into that today, although we are also working on this. And the other one is more of a representation challenge. And here is where I think that machine learning and GIS can help, and I'm going to show you how in the next slides. So I start with a little bit of introduction about machine learning algorithms of clustering that are very used by their summarization and segmentation features. So they basically can be used as a concise model for data. And they are based on the idea of grouping objects based on similarity. DBeersBcn is a very widely used clustering technique, and it relies on a concept of density that is enforced by its global parameters, which are the epsilon and the minimum points. These two global parameters are actually one of the major bottlenecks of DBeersBcn. Why? First, because parameters are hard to configure. And secondly, because they are global, they fail to detect clusters in areas with varying density. So you can see in these two examples how different combinations of parameters yield very different results. So to overcome this bottleneck, which I don't have time to explain further, but I can explain more in questions, there was another algorithm that was developed that does not produce a partition of the data like DBeersBcn, but it produces a special type of diagram called dendrogram. Well, we order the points. Based on this diagram, which you can see in this slide, you can see the clusters appear as valleys, and they are separated by noise regions, which appear depicted as peaks. So based on this, we can actually define a threshold parameter, so a steepness, that we use to cut the start and the end of the clusters. And the result is a hierarchical cluster partition, as you can see here, where outer clusters contain inner clusters. Okay, now I make a parenthesis to speak about visualization, which is something that you have seen very much in the previous slides. And I think when we are speaking about visualization of geographic data, the privileged tool would be geographical information systems. So in this project, we use open source virtual globe, very similar to Google Earth, which is NASA Worldwind, and it allows you to access a number of datasets, geographic datasets, such as the Blue Marble imagery or OpenStreetMap, and so on. So based on this, we built an application that generates a partition based on DBeersBcn or in OTIX, or because you shouldn't have to choose between the best of both worlds based on both of them. And it displays the results on top of the virtual globe. So to put it all together, I'm going to show you briefly a case study of a set of geolocated tweets in the city of Barcelona. And what you can see here on the left side is a DBeersBcn run, and on the right side, the output of an OTIX run. And as you can see, they're very different. And to show you a little bit like the value of location analysis and the value of the context produced by the underlying GIS, I'm going to pick one cluster here, which you can see in the center, and I'm going to try to identify what it means. So you can see this cluster I call Plaza Catalunya. And within it, you can see many smaller clusters. So for instance, on the top left side, you can see the cluster that is formed by the Triangle Shopping Center. And within this cluster, we have another cluster, which is the Fnac shop. And then you can also see, like, they recognize the Hard Rock Cafe and the metro station exit, and so on. So in the next slide, you will see a list of the identified clusters along with their hierarchical level. And you can see that you have all these different levels of detail provided by the algorithm. So to finish some conclusions, I think the cluster partition produced by DBeersBcn is very easy to interpret because it's exclusive clusters, and it also summarizes very well the data set. But on the other hand, the hierarchical cluster partition produced by OTIX has this interesting capacity of allowing you to look at the city through multiple scales, like through different lenses. And I think that's very good. So we should not have to choose between both of them. And of course, the visualizations provided by the virtual globe were very important to interpret the results. And therefore, I think that combining machine learning and GIS in a tight coupling, it's a very promising approach that we're going to see more and more in the field of spatial data mining. Thank you very much, and if you want, the presentation is available on the URL below. Thank you.